So I have my foreground and my background mostly painted. Now I want to paint in all of those major details that I think are going to make this composition really interesting. But one thing that I want to do is when I go in to paint my major details like this garbage can, the picnic table, these trees, I want them to have really small and really defined features. So it's not going to be blurry. It's not going to blend kind of like this. So if you remember, based on the wet on wet and the wet on dry experiments that we've done in previous classes, I need to wait for this paper to dry off completely. Otherwise, when I add in more colors, all of those really tiny details are just going to feather out and get bigger and lose that sharpness that I'm really looking for. So I need to let this dry for a couple minutes, and then I'm going to come back to it once it's dry. Okay? So this paper is pretty dry, which means that I should be good to go on and add in all of those smaller details. When I am going back in, one thing that I want to keep in mind is that I'm really working on layering and building up those colors. So I want to start with stuff that is furthest away. Okay? I'm using my hands a lot, but I don't know if it's quite translating. So sorry, guys. So when I look at this picture, the first thing that, or the thing that is closest to me, so the thing that is most in the foreground, so if this is the background, this is the foreground, is the garbage can. I want to make sure that I paint that kind of last then. The next thing that was closest to me is the picnic table. Then there's this tree in the corner, and then it's this pink tree, and then probably a tie for these two. So, and there's also this guy. What I want to do is go in and start with some of these trees that are in the background. When you think about a tree though, the things that are closest to you, so closest to me, so on top of something else is going to be the leaves. So that means that I want to start with the trunk and the branches of that tree. And then once I have that down and that is dry, then I can go in and add in all of those much smaller details of the leaves. So I'm going to start with this tree over here. And I'm going to use this brush again. It may actually be a little bit too big, so maybe let me see what else I got over here. I'm gonna try this one. It doesn't come to quite as fine of a point as I would like, but I think it will be okay. If I end up switching, I'll let you guys know. So I'm just gonna wet that brush and I'm gonna activate the brown paint. This tree has got some cool colors going on, so I may also add in some black as I'm working. This brown is really red. I want to cool it down a little bit by adding in some black. So I'm going to go in and just kind of make this part reach all the way towards the top. And I can go in as I'm painting this and kind of make sure that it is really light. So I don't want it to be dark. That way when I try and layer some green over it, the green's gonna show up really, really strongly. So then I wanna go in and start adding in some of those branches. So now I definitely think that this brush is too big. So I do have some smaller ones to the side over here. This is a 3 round. So rounds are good because they come to a really nice little point. I also have a liner, which is really similar to a round. I don't know what I'm doing. There you go. So these both have really fine points. So I'm gonna actually, I think, start with the liner, which is basically just a round, and add in some branches. And when I'm looking at this tree, there's no real kind of specific way or any sort of branches that really stand out as defining features. So I'm gonna go in and just kind of go for it. And I'm gonna fill up that space with just some small branches. And then this tree, remember, is behind this one. It's kind of hard to see, I know right now, but it'll start popping out more once. So I just want to have lots of branches, and they can go in kind of all directions, and they can be different colors, and they're going to add a lot of really nice texture when it comes to the final kind of painting. And I'm keeping them nice and light so that when it is time to go over it with the leaves, the leaves are going to really pop and stand out on top of this. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go in and do the same thing for this tree that I already started kind of covering up. I'm going to fast forward it through that. And while I'm working on this one's going to end up drying. And so once I finish this should actually be good to go in and paint those leaves. So I'll stop and talk a little bit more about how I'm going in to do that. But I'll just fast forward through painting this. If this one's not dry, then I'll also go back in and do the rest of the trees. So I finished painting all of the tree trunks and branches that I think I'm gonna have in my painting. You can see that it's starting to really look more like a landscape now. When I was working on painting the tree trunks, I started with the trunk and then I just kind of branched out from there and connected those lines going out. And I was just kind of moving that brush in a really organic way. And as it got further from the trunk, the branches got kind of smaller and thinner. This is going to need to dry a little bit more before I can go in and paint those leaves on top of here. So I'm going to give it a couple more minutes because there are some really thick spots. And remember, because I want these things to be really clear and defined, I need to wait for it to dry. Otherwise, when I add in my paint, it's just going to spread right out all over the place.